Alright, brew tubers, here is the lager, the dark lager that I was telling you about and I just brewed in that video. This is an equivalent of, this one has, the head's not quite as tanned as I did do a little change up on the recipe, but the recipe, oh, you can smell the roasted malts in that, just from that dry malt and even the Cooper's dark malt. Oh, tell you what, there's even a hint of coffee in that. Now I wanted to tell you, I did say plenty of times over the video that there are many ways of changing this recipe. As I said, this could be a base recipe. If you just want to use it as a base, that's personal, totally up to you. I do use it as a base. Some of the ways I change it, I'll explain those now as I kept banging on about you being able to do it. It's not really fair that I don't tell you how to do it. So basically you can simply just change the yeast. You can use the W34/70. It gives you a clean, dry, less European style lager, more of an American style lager, I guess. And you can also, you could throw some hops into it and make it an IPL, or you could use an ale yeast and ferment it at 16 to 18 and then just have it as a porter. You could also turn it into a dark IPA, just dry hopping it. That one I put on today, I'm going to dry hop that, probably with about 100 grams of dry hops. And I'm going to basically use that as a well, I guess it'd be an IPL because I use lager yeast, but effectively it's going to be very hoppy. I've done that before and it's actually really, really nice. Another thing I do is you can add chocolate malt to that, 300 grams of chocolate malt to that recipe that I did at the start there. Cold steep that in the fridge overnight for in 2 litres of water. Crack the grains, throw it in 2 litres of water, keep it in the fridge overnight, and then the next day give it a 10-minute boil, throw it into your mix rather than your hot water in on top of your dry and your extract. Throw that in on top. That'll help you, give you the heat to sort of dissolve the sugars in your malt extracts, and then basically go from there. And then it adds a completely different element. That chocolate malt really adds depth to it as well. And again, you could use a lager yeast, you could use an ale yeast, you could use a USO5, Nottingham, whatever you feel like. USO4, I'm not a fan of USO4, I've had issues with that, but you know, you can do that as well. Another thing I do with that same method, that steeping, I steep a heap of chai ingredients, so your cardamom, star anise, ginger, cloves, cinnamon, and then basically put that into a muslin bag or a hop sock or something like that. Drop that into about 1 litre of boiling water. Just let that sit for 20 minutes, just while you're preparing all your ingredients, while you've got the hot water, you know, your malt extracts softening in the sink. Just have that sitting on. You know, you could even put it in a French press. I've never done that, but you could do that. Make hop teas in my French press. And then you've got yourself a winter beer, you know. So that's another alternative. Additionally to that, you could make a Baltic Porter. You could effectively keep the same ingredients, the 86 Pilsner, and then add a tin of amber malt instead, and add a kilo or 2 kilos of dry malt extract, light dry or anything, and a kilo of dextrose. That'll get you up around the 8.5%. Add a 300 grams of the chocolate malt, as we mentioned before, fermented out with W34/70, and I can guarantee you that's just a fantastic beer. I've actually done that recently. I've got it inside, just aging at the moment and lagering. I will do a video on that because it's an interesting beer. That was exactly the recipe that I used for it, the one I just explained then. Fermented it for a month at 12 degrees, let that go, and then I raised the temperature to do a diacetyl rest for a week, and then I dropped it, cold crashed it again, and then I raised it to 10 again, and then I threw in 2.5 kilos of blackberries, 500 grams of coffee, and 500 grams of cocoa nibs. So I left that for a month to steep, and then I pulled those out, and then I threw in 50 grams of bourbon oak chips, and then that is currently sitting in the fermenter at the moment. I've got a conical, steel conical from SS Brewing, and so yeah, I've got that sitting there now, and that is just tasting incredible. You can really get the coffee notes, and then it rounds out with the chocolate, and it's really smooth. And you get that warming because it's about a 12% beer. It's worked itself out to be. It started at 10, and then with the added 2.5 kilos of blackberries, that's increased the alcohol because it went through another fermentation period process, and I think that's excuse me, I'll wet the whistle. Oh, it's amazing. Like I said, for a base dark lager, dark beer, this one is just incredible. So yeah, get out there, try a few different things. I've tried, like I said, I've done the chai one, I've done the doing it with ale yeast. I've dry hopped it with ale yeast and with lager yeast, so to get an IPL and an IPA dark. Just kept it as is. The one I did last time in the fridge, that's an IPL. This one, that's just a straight. I just changed a few of the base stuff. Rather than using a kilo of dry malt extract, I used 500 grams of just light dry malt. So there's plenty of options, ways around this. You could steep fruit in it. You could throw bourbon or French oak chips or any form of oak chips or anything like that. I will say with bourbon oak chips, just be careful how much you put in. I put in 50 and leave it for longer periods. The one I've got at the moment, the Baltic, that's been sitting in there for a month, and that's now starting to develop those flavours. You can definitely taste it. But if I went 100 grams of oak staves or chunks, then within 2 weeks it becomes very buttery and very bourbony, I guess is the easiest way to say it. If you don't like that flavour, if you don't want that flavour to overwhelm and overpower, then definitely stay away from that. Also, you can throw, and I've spoken to guys in who I brew with and who I'm associated with in the brew clubs around here, and they've said also that just adding a souring agent, Brettanomyces or Sacro, whatever the other ones are, something like that. I do actually want to try this beer and try it. I got myself a stainless steel. Effectively, it's like a big sink, but it's a shallow one. So it was used for scaling fish and things like that. It's got a little plug in the middle of it. It's all sanitized. It's basically brand new. A mate of mine bought it for his house down the coast and then moved and overseas and didn't want it, so he gave me that. So I've just got that sitting in the garage. I'm effectively going to try and use that as cool ship, potentially. There's not a lot of fauna around this area. It's a new suburb, so it might not actually have the effect that I want it to have. And that might actually not work, but I definitely want to try doing a bit of wild fermentation and seeing just what's around. I know people who have done a wild fermentation and just stuck their wort open next to blueberry bushes, and apparently they've gotten good results doing that. Obviously, you pick up bacteria, and it's trying to work that out, which I'm not overly sure on how to do that yet. So that's going to be a way off, but that's an opportunity. This is a big beer that you could do that with, especially if you do the Baltic version at 12%, and then you sour it. I don't know how it'll taste. Someone out there might be able to tell me. But it's potentially could be a very good beer. Potentially could be an absolute god awful beer. I can't tell you. But all I know is that this beer here is an absolutely fantastic beer. It's you can see, now I'm getting to the base of it a little bit. You can sort of see the hue of it, a bit reddish. Oh man, as Craig Faraway or Craig Tuber, he'd love that, I think. So yeah, that's it from me. That's my 23-minute excluding cleanup and sanitation. But you can do the sanitation while you're prepping. Again, you can just have your tins softening and then do all your sanitizing in that stage. And then, yeah, basically go from there. So, yeah, if you've got any questions, let me know. If not, all the best with your brewing. I hope you try this. And again, let me know if you try this, and if you come up with a different variation or something that works better for you, let me know, because I'd love to try it as well. But for me, this is possibly the most simple extract beer that you could ever make, and it's a dark beer. So if you like dark beers, it's a hole-in-one. So yeah, all the best, and happy brewing. Peace.